welcome to Special Assignment. I'm Anneliese Burgess. Tonight we look at the state of the South African railways. Over the past century, the railways have formed a central part of South Africa's development. After the discovery of gold, they opened up the interior and linked it to the rest of South Africa. Then, during the days of apartheid, it became a haven for out-of-work Afrikaners. There was strict job preservation, and white Afrikaners were given sheltered employment. Then, during the 80s, the nationalist government decided that the railways had to be restructured along business lines. The consequences for the once mighty railways were devastating. Since then, rail has been allowed to decline, and along with it the communities along the tracks. Now government wants to reverse that decline, but transport workers fear that the plan they have might not be the best one available. Jessica Pitchford and cameraman Richard Davies filed this report.
This Karoo town exists because of the railway that runs through it. In 1884, a line was constructed linking the interior to the coast. The first railway houses were built. Slowly, a town developed to provide for the railway community. Nopoort, situated between Middelburg and Colesberg, eventually became one of the busiest junctions in the country.
Hierdie plek was 'n muurnes van mense jare terug. Dit was 'n pragtige plek. Honderde mense het hier gewerk en hulle lewe hier gemaak. Die stoomlokomotiewe is byvoorbeeld hier so opgemaak en gereed gemaak om op die lyne te werk. En is dit ondenkbaar om te dink dat hierdie plek vandag in so 'n toestand is en so vervalle geraak het.
These days, trains never stop at Nopoort station. They barely even slow down. The buildings that once teemed with activity exude only silence and decay. Railway residences give no hint of the life they once contained. Nopoort is home to one of the biggest shunting yards in South Africa. Now it lies forgotten. Infrastructure worth millions has been abandoned to the elements. The town once revolved around the railway. Ironically, the railway also led to its demise when a decision was made to close the depot, to move the workers and their families.
Wat ek vir jou dit kan sê is dat die inwoners van Nopoort is mense wat lief is vir hulle dorp, trotse mense. En dit wat met hulle gebeur het. Ek dink die hartseer en die pyn wat daarmee gepaard gaan sal vir altyd by hulle bly. En ek glo nie dit was ooit in ag geneem toe daar besluit is om so afskaling van so geweldige mate in die dorp toe te pas nie. En die impak wat het gehad op die dorp, toe Spoon net besluit hy's uit die gepad uit die dorp uit, was katastrofies vir almal.
A 1,000 economically active people left the town. Former Spoornet supervisor J.R. Erasmus decided to stay.
Terwyl die mense hier was, is alles netjies, die plek was mooi en opgepas, oral is na gekyk en hier was lewe in die dorp. Ek weet nie, 80 huisgesinne met skoolgaande kinders. Die skool het by die 350 leerlinge verloor alleen na die mense uitgetrek het. En so die ding alles stiller geraak in die dorp. 'n Man kan nie net uit jou besigheid uit 'n lewe maak, dit is onmoontlik. Die koopkrag is te swak. Hulle leef maar van pensionaars se geld wat ou mens pensioen kry, siekpaaie en kinderpaaie. Dis waarvan hulle nou maar leef in die dorp.
The scaling down of railway activity has had a devastating effect on towns throughout the Karoo. There's no employment, no buying power. Down the line is Northville's a thriving railhead when the nearby Greep Dam was being built. But not anymore.
I grew up in this area, and our life revolved around the station. When I was a little boy, I can remember coming in to fetch the mail, to deliver the cream. We collected our newspaper, and all our produce was sent by rail. Our horses were sent to market. If we sold lucerne, this was all sent by rail. When we marketed sheep to market, that all went by rail. And with the advent of road transport, this has fallen by the wayside.
Sizwe Diasi is acting manager of the Umsumbomvu Local Council, which governs the area. He's based in Colesberg, which has been amalgamated with towns like Northville's and Noupoort.
Whatever problems financially, problems they have as a municipality that side, we've inherited those. We can feel it in the municipality side because people are not paying their services, and they can only pay their services if they've got work.
Colesberg Station has been downgraded to a ticket office and has also fallen into disrepair.
If you look around our stations, they're actually ghost stations. No window panes, no doors, no anything. The buildings are getting dilapidated. So what we need to do maybe, if they can be, my wish will be, let them utilize this infrastructure to the benefit of the communities. They must bring back the services they had before. Maybe at a lesser scale, but at least it will be, it's half a bread is better than no bread at all.
Spoornet, which operates South Africa's main rail network, is one of the biggest landowners in the country. It has allowed some members of the community to utilize its abandoned assets. The only project on the go in Noupoort is a drug rehabilitation centre run by a Christian group. It rents warehouses from Spoornet for a nominal fee. But the local council says this isn't benefiting the whole community.
Since 1996, we've been, negotiating with them to try and plow something back for the community. But up until at this stage, there was no response, whilst the buildings are just standing here as white elephants doing nothing.
What also infuriates the council is that the railway workers were moved to a minor junction called Rosmead between Middelburg and Steynsburg. Rosmead is much smaller than Noupoort, and the move made no economic sense. Today, the most striking thing about the Rosmead area is the rolling stock that stretches for kilometres, seemingly abandoned in the veld. Further west, the saga continues. In its heyday, the station at Nelspoort was voted the most attractive in the Karoo. But the goldfish in the pond have died. And so has the town. Residents say they're virtually stranded. Nowadays, the Trans-Karoo mainline passenger train stops for only 2 minutes in the dead of night.
In die 10 jaar wat ek nou hier woon, alles agteruit gegaan. Dis 'n risiko om regtig op die stasie te kom en op te klim. Daar's geen beligting nie. Jou lewe is in gevaar.
En ons moet nou in die donker te sit, is ons moet sit en wag.
Ja.
Wie weet wie staan agter hy dik boom om jou beseer. Dan weet die ander.
Mina Ordman's late husband worked on the railways for 30 years. She and other former railway families have to pay Spoornet rent of 300 rands a month to live in this desolate spot.
Daar zit maar vergaan. Hier is die telefoon, hier is genoeg water vir ons. Jy kan nie 'n tuin vir jou maak nie. En hier is die krag, ons gebruik kersse. Iemand kan hier siek is, jy het nie 'n foon nie, jy kan niks doen nie.
The railway that was once the lifeline of communities is now contributing to social and economic collapse. Spoornet says it had no option.
Branch lines were originally built for strategic purposes and to support certain agricultural functions and to open up the country. At that stage, the alternative to road was to build rail, and it was basically a very cheap option at that stage. And we also operated fairly cheaply with steam, but with the sort of the demise in industrial activities in the rural areas, seeing that we are a derived economy, if there's nothing to transport, there's nothing to transport.
Beatrice Martins lives in another Karoo town, Hutchison. He says Spoornet should be thinking of people, not profit. He's bitter about what has happened to the railway community in the platteland.
Since commercialization started in 1990, that time I was still an employee of Transnet, they started to shut down some of their operations. And then when they became a private company, Spoornet started to retrench people. As you can see around here, on that side it used to be the shops. There was a shop and a butchery. Today there's nothing. Out of 62 households here, only 5 still working for Transnet. Most of the people here are pensioners and others are unemployed. And still they have to live.
Amid these tales of despair, government has to make a decision about the future of the railways. It's studying 2 sets of proposals. One from international consultants who were paid 10 million rands for their services, the other from advisors to Spoornet. The Department of Public Enterprises will make the final decision, but they won't discuss the options. Nor will Spoornet management.
What is government now saying about rail privatisation? And I think the answer has to be very little.
But the Parliamentary Transport Committee has been encouraging public debate.
And I think that's part of what the first...
Essentially, both proposals coming from those 2 entities are to cut up the rail system and to concession out those that are potentially profitable, because you'll get concessionaires coming in more readily for those. That's certainly a possibility that can be debated. The danger, of course, is that you lose the capacity to cross-subsidize.
The profitable lines are those that carry iron ore and coal. At the moment, these are subsidizing Spoornet's loss-making lines. Trade unions have their consultants too. Labour and Economic Development Institute Naledi advises against concessioning.
If you break the company up and concession it off, private sector operators will only really be interested in operating the profitable lines, and they will neglect, run down or close what is not profitable. And you are already seeing the consequences of that kind of approach. So bringing in private sector operators would only exacerbate the problem and only disconnect more communities and more sections of our society.
Unions say internationally, privatization of the railways has failed. Private rail companies can't afford to upgrade infrastructure and safety is compromised.
We say that Spoornet is an asset of the people of this country. We are not going to give Spoornet to any international investments coming from the UK or America or anywhere. Spoornet will remain the property of the people of South Africa.
We potentially have industrial muscle to use, and we will use it if need be, in the interests of not only railway workers, but in the interests of the transport system in this country. And we believe in the interests of the country as a whole.
I was very puzzled with that SABC march, or the reasons for it. They've had the opportunity of making submissions, and a special task team was set up, which includes SABC, to look at all these matters. I really didn't understand the logic of that march.
The railway station at Grelingstad closed more than 10 years ago. The town is close to the Mpumalanga-Gauteng border and is steeped in history. A railway line was built in 1894, linking Johannesburg to Durban. Greylandstad sprang up alongside it. The railway was used extensively by the British, who occupied this area during the South African War. But it's no longer important to anyone. At about the same time that the station was closed, a new road to Durban was built, bypassing Greylandstad. Town Councillor Saul Mahlangu can't believe the authorities at the time could have been so short-sighted to deal the town this double blow.
People were not consulted when this happened, just things happen. As like banks closed down, really the community didn't have a say on that. Because now it's even possible that even the post office will be closed. And those things are those things that affect the lives of the community directly.
Businesses that haven't yet closed are struggling.
Monica, koffie of thee?
Yes.
Maak vir die baas weer thee. Wil jy 'n bietjie thee nog hê? Ja. Net vir die baas.
Sari Becker has lived here for close on 50 years. She's watched the town steadily decline.
Jy's al wen. Toe ek in 52 getroud is, toe het ek ons gebly in Greylandstad. Toe was dit 'n ander dorp. Dis vandag niks. Hier was 2 banke, 3 garages, ingenieurswerke, 2 meulens wat vandag alles tot niet is.
The country towns are all dying out. You can take all the towns like Greylandstad, you get Derelict. Those people in power have forgotten the small towns. They're not bothered about them, really. There's no infrastructure at all in the small towns. I mean, to keep the towns alive, they should build small little factories in the small towns. It's the only way the small towns can stay alive.
Henny van Skalkwyk is principal of the local school.
Die getal leerlinge wat die skool gehad het, wat deur die spoorweg voorsien is, gesinne wat in diens was van die spoorweë, was dit meer kinders as wat ons skool heidaglik is. Die 17 gesinne het vir ons 58 leerlinge gegee. Dit was 'n florerende dorpie. En 'n dorp wat baie swaar gesteun het op die spoorweë. Besighede, die boere, die skole, almal het gesteun op die spoorweë en ons het werklik gebruik gemaak van die spoorweë. Dis weg. En jy kan sien hoe lyk die dorp. Daar is nie meer 'n dorp nie.
Some farmers in the district still use the railways to transport their produce, but not many. Spoornet is no longer interested in servicing small customers.
If the farmer can offer us a train load, we will be interested. If the farmer offer us a milk can, I don't think we're interested.
But farmers say the inefficiencies of the railways drove them away. A container moving from Durban to Johannesburg takes over 4 days by rail, just half a day by road.
First of all, you're bound by time. In business, most of us work different hours to what the railways do. We work through weekends. The railways stop. They stop on a Friday afternoon and they only open on a Monday. Whereas in private business, we work Saturdays, and if loads must go on a Sunday, they go on a Sunday. At the same time, one wants your product to be moved as quickly as possible and as cheaply as possible. It's a private enterprise. We're there to make money, and it is killing the roads, I will admit that, but I think they must upgrade the roads.
The cost of keeping roads going, the costs of the heavy traffic on roads, the costs of road accidents, road congestion, pollution from the fuel used by the trucks, all of these kinds of costs, the broader social and economic and health costs and so on, are not taken into account when Spoornet looks at a line and says, this is not profitable. And we need to find a way of taking account of all of those broader issues before considering whether a line is redundant or not.
Deregulation of freight transport on our roads has caused tremendous problems. The major problem of overloading has to be dealt with. And we are currently looking at ways of tightening up the law imposing bigger penalties for overloading, but also making sure that overloading is actually dealt with. It is a very important component of our program to shift from road to rail.
The problem is, the problem that we see as a union, is that if government insists on pursuing its current thinking around the future of rail, and that is the concessioning out of lines, closing certain branch lines and so on, the small positive impact of clamping down on overloading and so on will be completely overwhelmed by a much longer and more serious impact of shifting even more freight onto the roads.
If government heeds the advice of its consultants, more branch lines will be closed. This could result in almost half the total rail network disappearing, a staggering 10,000 kilometres of track. Over the past 3 years, about 4,000 kilometres of rail has literally slipped off the map. The branch line between Bethel and Volksrust in Mpumalanga is one of the latest to go. Spoornet's depot at Volksrust is to close at the end of April. The station closed 6 years ago. The building, once a national monument, is in ruins.
Dit was die stoomdepot. Daar was 'n koolstasie geweest waar die stoomlokomotiewe kolle gelaai het daar. Nee, ek is hier gebore en groot geword. Ek was 'n spoorweg man se kind en ek het self spoorweg toe gekom. Vir die afgelope 50 jaar is ek nou hier. Ek werk 34 jaar vir Spoornet. Dit is 'n stasie wat groot bedrywighede gehad het. Ons het 3 rangeerkarre hier gehad met vol personeel. Hier is die pakkieskantoor. My vrou was selfs werksaam in hierdie pakkieskantoor voor ons troue. As gevolg van die feit dat Spoornet afgeskaal het, het hulle dit toegemaak. Alles is tot niet. Toe die vandaliste ingetree en alles afgebreek. Soos jy kan sien hoe lyk hy vandag. Hier is absoluut niks oor van hierdie stasie nie. En ons hele dorp lê onder hierdie besluite.
Dit maak my baie hartseer, want om te dink ek het hier begin op Volksrust as 'n stoker. Hier was verkeer dat die treine buitekant opgehoop het tot hulle nie kan inkom hierson nie, en die gaan net nou niks aan.
Workers have been told to relocate to Newcastle, 60 kilometres away. It's a problem for Thomas Tlachwayo. He doesn't want to leave. There's no other work in town, and there's no market for property.
Ik ken al die mensen van hier. En ik heb hier zo geboren, ik heb lekker hier zo gewerkt, ik heb die huis hier zo gekocht, al die goed.
Spoornet het 100 huise wat hulle self goedkoop verhuur en selfs goedkoop verkoop. So daar's geen mark vir ons huise nie.
When you start to rationalize, you have to decide where's the best position to have your drivers located. And that best position was not Volksrust.
Soon, the only reminder of Volksrust's railway heritage will be the historic steam train in the centre of the town. Should the government heed the advice of its consultants and privatise Spoornet, unions estimate a loss of 15,000 jobs. Transport workers say they have their own solution.
There's a hell of a lot we can do that is positive for the economy of the country in respect of rail. Rail can become, in our view, a stimulant for economic activity in many of these regions, rural, many of our poorer provinces. But it means a commitment from national, provincial and local government, and of course the communities themselves and workers to make that happen. And that's really what we're saying. Expand that network, invest into that network. Don't cut it up into small pieces and make it go away.
Train on route to Kroonstad, Bloemfontein and East London. Passengers, take your seats please. Mainline passenger services wishes you a pleasant and safe journey.
South Africa was once stitched together by its railway system. Now it's coming undone. And unless the economy of the country is in some way built around the railways, it isn't likely to be restored to its former glory.
En die chambers nog na 'n trein
as you